March 23rd, 1998. Aboard a luxury Caribbean cruise liner, the Bradley family of Richmond, Virginia, are 2 days into a trip that has taken them from Puerto Rico to the Netherlands Antilles island of Aruba. The first 2 days of the trip are a dream, but what is supposed to be a last chance family vacation before their adult children leave the nest quickly becomes a nightmare for parents Ron and Iva, as their daughter Amy, 2 months shy of her 24th birthday, a decorated college athlete and soon-to-be master's student, will disappear early the next morning without a trace. March 21st, 1998, Puerto Rico. The Bradley family of Chesterfield, Virginia, are about to set sail on a dream Caribbean cruise. But for their 23-year-old daughter, Amy Lynn Bradley, the idea of spending a week on the open ocean sounds a little less appealing. The tickets are a gift from Ron Bradley's employer. The trip of a lifetime on a luxury 3,000 capacity cruise liner.
We flew down to Puerto Rico and then we got to the terminal, and then Amy and Brad followed on a different flight and came down, and we were very excited about this opportunity.
But Amy is unsure. Though a strong swimmer, the recent college grad is nervous about the cruise.
I think we all have that gut instinct. We all have premonitions, if you will. Often we're taught to ignore them because they're just fantasy. A lot of the time, you need to recognize your gut instincts and follow them.
It's not that Amy Bradley is dreading spending time with her family. In fact, quite the opposite. The Bradley family share a uniquely close bond, especially Amy and younger brother Brad. And it's this close bond that ultimately leads to Amy making the fateful decision to accompany her family on the trip. Amy is a former swim team coach, decorated multi-sport athlete, and receives multiple scholarship offers after high school. But the driven sports science major elects to go to a college close to home in Virginia. Having just moved into a new apartment and adopted a new dog, Amy's looking forward to blazing her own trail. With only a few months before she goes back to school to get her master's degree, Amy feels she can't pass up an opportunity to spend some quality time with her family. Ron and Iva are excited to take their 2 grown children on one last family vacation before the realities of adult life begin to get in the way. But Amy's initial reluctance would prove prescient as strange things begin to occur just a couple of days into the trip.
This evening was more of a dressy, formal affair, and Ron and Brad both had tuxedos. I had a formal outfit. Amy was absolutely stunning, but there was attention that was garnered to her. We had noticed during dinner that the crew members were, we thought, over attentive to Amy particularly. If Amy spoke or she needed anything, these guys at breakneck speed would accommodate. And this is a mama speaking. I have to say that both of my children, they're the kind of kids when they walk into a room, they look beautiful.
Also interested in Amy is the on-ship band's resident bass player. Other guests sitting near the Bradley family begin to comment on the attention the crew is giving Amy.
After dinner, there were pictures being taken, portraits. Amy and Brad took several portraits together. And once portraits are taken, they're put in the photo gallery on a boat. And then later you can go view them and purchase them if you'd like. And so after that, Ron and I were having a drink, and the main waiter from our table approached us. I had known that when you're on a cruise, the crew members aren't really supposed to approach passengers for conversations or whatever. And he approached us, he walked right up to us, and he said, "Where is Amy?" We said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, we want to take her to Carlos and Charlie's." And I said, "Well, she's with her brother." That was the end of that. And when Amy and Brad met up with us, we said, the waiter came out and wanted to know where you were and wanted to take you to Carlos and Charlie's. We guess it's some kind of bar out here. But we said, look, we know you're 23, Brad, you're 21, but traveling as a family, we're in a foreign country. It is late. The ship's going to be leaving soon. We would ask that you not leave the ship. Both of them said, well, we're not going anywhere. We're going to go up on the upper deck. And then Amy said, who said this? And I told her again, and she said, geez, gives me the creeps. It was odd that a crew member would come directly and ask where she was, and they wanted to take her off of the ship.
Later that evening, Amy joins her family at the nightclub.
There was a calypso party. I did notice our waiter from the dining hall walked up to Amy and Brad, and there was conversation. I saw the waiter look at the bass player in the band and give a nod, and didn't pay much attention to it at that time.
Around 1 a.m., Ron and Iva decide to go to bed, leaving Amy and Brad to dance with their new acquaintances.
And we said, we're wiped out, we're gonna go to bed, and y'all have a good time. Y'all gonna hang together, right? Oh yeah. And last thing that we said to Amy, and I kissed her, was, I love you. I'll see you in the morning. So we went back to the room. We went to bed. We thought that they're safe.
Then, around 4 a.m., Brad leaves the club to go back to the room.
Brad had come in just a little bit before her, and he had gone on the balcony.
Around 4:15 a.m., Amy finally joins her brother.
They talked for a while, and they talked about what they were going to do on Curacao.
Brad decides to turn in. Not yet knowing it will be the last time he sees his sister, Brad tells her he loves her and goes inside. Ron wakes later that morning, around 5:15 a.m.
He said he leaned up and he could see Amy sitting on the balcony, and then he could see that Brad was in, so he laid back down.
But what happens within the next 20 minutes as the ship is preparing to disembark in Curacao will leave Ron Bradley and his family in tatters.
He woke up again in the next 20 minutes or so, and he looked and he said, you know, she wasn't there, and she wasn't in the bed. And so he sat up and could see the ship was not moving, and decided, well, I'm gonna go look for her.
Her belongings are still in the room. The only things missing are her cigarettes and lighter. Thinking perhaps she went up to the deck early that morning alone, Ron looks all over the ship.
So he starts looking. he's unable to spot her, and then he becomes a little bit concerned.
He searches for over an hour, but finds no trace of Amy anywhere.
So now Ronnie is in full speed, and he is beside himself. He comes back down to our floor to get me. I wake up and look at him, and it didn't even look like him. He looked terrified, a look of desperation, and I said, "What is wrong?" And he says, "I can't find Amy." And I said, "What do you mean you can't find her?" And he said that she's left the room, and I've looked everywhere, and I can't find her. So this is about 7. So he spent all that time looking. So Brad, of course, wakes up. "She was here. What do you mean you can't find her?"
The Bradleys turn to the captain, hoping to be able to put out a call, alerting the entire ship to Amy's disappearance.
I was insistent, and Ron was insistent, do not let the gangplanks down. Don't let anybody off of this boat. Back the boat away from the dock. Don't let anybody get off of here in Curacao. Then I heard, "Amy Bradley, please contact the purser's desk. Amy Bradley, please contact the purser's desk." And I'm saying, we need to search for her. There's 3,000 eyes and ears on this boat. People would help us.
Now, in total shock, the Bradleys are beginning to fear the worst.
Our initial thought, with all of the attention that's been paid to her, just comes right up, and I said, somebody's got her. Somebody has her. We can't find her, and she wouldn't leave us.
But with the ship about to disembark on the island of Curacao, the missing persons call can't be made. It's standard procedure that no matter what the circumstances are, passengers must disembark as scheduled.
And about that time, I heard the announcement that passengers could now disembark to Curacao.
And so, as the cruise liner's other 3,000-odd passengers leave the vessel, the captain and his crew offer to search the ship themselves. Where is Amy? Has someone taken her? And if so, why? It is March of 1998, and the Bradley family of Chesterfield, Virginia, are on an all-expenses-paid Caribbean cruise. One last family vacation with their adult children. On their 3rd day, they have a fancy dinner and dance the night away at the ship's nightclub.
And we said, we're wiped out, we're gonna go to bed. And last thing that we said to Amy, and I kissed her, was, "I love you. I'll see you in the morning."
But early the next morning, the Bradleys' vacation will turn into a nightmare as 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley vanishes from her room without a trace. As they reach their next port of call, the Netherlands Antilles island of Curacao, the other passengers are about to disembark without any of them knowing the young college grad is missing.
I was insistent, and Ron was insistent, don't let anybody get off of here in Curacao. And about that time, I heard the announcement that passengers could now disembark to Curacao.
Curacao is a very beautiful place, but it definitely has a darkness to it. It was the hub of the Dutch Caribbean slave trade, and there's still a lot of simmering animosity between the Dutch tourists and some of the rich residents and the natives of the island, who are typically a lot more poor. They're working menial jobs. It looks like paradise, but it definitely has an edge.
Brad just said, "I can't wait here." So he left the room. He said, "I'm going to go look for her."
But even before the rest of the crew are alerted to the situation, one particular member of the ship's band already seems to know about Amy's disappearance.
And about that time, the band member approached Brad and said, "Sorry to hear about your sister."
How does the bass player already know that Amy's missing when the only people the Bradleys have told are the captain and head of security?
It's odd that somebody would have this sort of inside knowledge into potentially Amy's whereabouts. She'd only just been reported missing. And the odds that this person would know that she's missing already seems very strange.
When people are giving cues about this or talking about inside details that no one has made public yet, it should really raise some red flags.
After searching for hours, the Bradleys reconvene with the crew.
The captain looks at us and says, "We have searched every nook and cranny of this ship, and Amy is not on the ship." And so again, we are begging, please put out a picture, circulate a picture, make an announcement that she's missing. Everybody look. And that man looked at me and said, "I cannot do that. It would disturb the other guest." And then the next thing that came out of his mouth was, "She's not on the ship, so you've got a couple choices. You can stay here on the ship, and we're leaving Curacao in a few hours, or if you'd like to disembark here, you can do that because she's not on the ship." And I said, "Well, she's not in the water, so she's got to be on the ship. And she wouldn't have left the ship without letting us know." And he said, "Well, if she is found on the island and you're on the ship, we can't get you off the ship." That's what they do.
Eventually, the captain circulates a photo of Amy throughout the ship in search of anyone who knows her whereabouts.
We made a decision to get off of the ship.
The Bradley family hit the ground running in Curacao as they frantically try to locate their daughter before the ship weighs anchor again. But with the American embassy closed and the FBI unable to reach them for at least another 24 hours, the desperate family make the difficult decision to stay behind on the island as the ship sets off without them.
What do you do? I mean, here we are, we're stranded in this place. So we're standing there, and all of a sudden, the boat comes down the canal in front of us. And you can hear the music and all of that that's going on, and our room was on the side where we were, and the lights were dark. And so they didn't miss their leave time. You know, they had a schedule. They didn't want to disturb the guest. So they left us.
The ship leaves for its next port of call in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, taking with it, potentially, their only hope of finding Amy. What happened to Amy, and who's responsible for her disappearance? What was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime family vacation has quickly turned into a living hell for the Bradley family of Richmond, Virginia. The first couple of days of their Caribbean vacation goes well, but by the early morning hours of the third day, Father Ron wakes to find his 23-year-old daughter, Amy, gone, plunging the Bradleys into a desperate search for answers. One that will take them off the presumed safety of the cruise ship and onto foreign soil. With the FBI unable to reach them for at least 24 hours, the Bradleys spend the next couple of days in Curacao, looking and waiting for any news of Amy.
We could not imagine where she could be. The next day, my entire family is back here in the United States, contacting anybody that they can to get the FBI involved to help us find Amy. It's important for people that decide to leave our ports and step on board any ship to know that a few miles out from the dock, you are now in international waters, and it is lawless. So when you are in international waters and there is no law, you have no rights. So we find out from my brother, and I do have a signed statement from the security officer, that a search was affected to include the bathrooms, the common areas, lockers, and she wasn't found. So that's not every nook and cranny. With that news, we have to get back on the boat.
the Bradleys are told to fly to St. Thomas to intercept the ship upon the FBI's recommendation.
We demanded to be allowed back on the boat. Absolutely demanded.
The Bradleys return to the ship and confront the captain and crew, this time with the FBI.
I've gone into the mode of, how dare you tell us that you've searched the ship and you haven't?
Now that the FBI investigation is underway, 2 college students approach the Bradleys.
Brad had met these 2, and so had Amy a few days prior, and they said, we saw Amy. We saw her that morning, early that morning. She got on the elevator with a band member. Amy was looking out, and the elevator opened to the disco, and they stepped into the disco.
Did the bass player say something that could have convinced Amy to return to the nightclub with him later that morning? If what the college students say is true, it would go some way towards explaining why the bass player knew Amy had gone missing before almost anyone else on board.
When we can talk to the people who are purportedly the last to see somebody before they've gone missing, that gives us a point in time to work on in the investigation. Where were they before that? Where did they go after that? These people are very important to the investigation.
Being allegedly the last person seen with Amy, the bass player is interrogated by the FBI. Brad tells the investigators about the odd interaction he had with the bass player on the morning Amy first went missing. But the bass player refutes Brad's statement, claiming to have no knowledge of Amy's disappearance. And then there's the case of the missing photographs. According to the ship's photographer, he distinctly remembers taking multiple pictures of Amy that night and found it strange when they appeared to have gone missing. Though, when brought up with the crew, no one seems to know what happened to the photos of Amy.
All of Amy and Brad's pictures were gone out of the gallery a few hours after they were put up. Why were Amy's pictures missing? Just not there. And then something happened that was particularly haunting. There was a videographer that was hired outside of the boat's personnel, and he had heard about a girl missing. And at this point, he said that he went back to his room and went through all of the video, and he found video of Amy and this band member in the disco together.
The Bradley family of Richmond, Virginia are on what was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime, aboard a luxury cruise liner. But only a few short days into their vacation, the tight-knit family have been torn to shreds as Amy Lynn Bradley, just a month shy of her 24th birthday, suddenly goes missing. The Bradley family believe their daughter was kidnapped. There is one piece of evidence in this case that would remain under wraps until years later. Some might say years too late.
There was a videographer. He found video of Amy and this band member in the disco together.
During the initial FBI investigation that began on March 26, 1998, the videographer offered up the footage to a travel companion of the Bradleys, who passed it on to the head of security so they could give it to the FBI.
The other part of the story is that his cabin was visited, and he was told to hand over his master tapes. He said, "I'm not handing over anything." We didn't know there was any such copy until probably a year or so later, when the brother of the videographer contacted us and said, "We've noticed that none of this has ever been shown." And we said, "Well, what?" So he tells us what it is. And so we contact the videographer, and he's blown away.
It was a real break in the case, and also super strange that all of a sudden this footage of Amy dancing was finally recovered. Why did it take so long for it to come forward? And then there's the other footage of her by herself by the elevator as well, that now all of a sudden has come out of nowhere.
The bass player is given a polygraph test by the FBI and passes.
Polygraphs are still used as tools in investigations. They're widely known to be not admissible in court in terms of the results of the polygraph, but they are definitely a tool to be used by an investigator to elicit the truth from someone.
The next day, their worst nightmare having only just begun, the Bradley family leave the cruise ship and return to Virginia, devastated.
We get home and immediately launch our own full 24/7 investigation, and contacts and phone calls and media to get Amy's face out.
Later that summer, Ron and Brad return to Curacao to see what kinds of clues they can gather themselves. And it's not long before they run into someone who claims to have seen Amy. A local cab driver tells them Amy approached his cab on the morning she went missing and asked to use his phone.
And he said, "She is here. She did not leave the boat. She did not fall from the boat."
The cab driver also provides one significant descriptive detail that convinces Ron and Brad the woman he saw was indeed Amy. Her vibrant green eyes.
And he gave 3 areas to go and look. He said, "Go and look and do not speak, do not talk to anybody, but she is here." That search involved those 3 areas, which were very isolated, unusual areas.
Something else strikes Brad as odd. While driving the streets, he hears what he can only describe as Amy's voice, calling out to him from a passing vehicle. But upon catching up with the car, the disappointed men realize that Amy was not there. Had Brad merely heard what he wanted to hear? Or is this perhaps evidence to suggest Amy is on the island of Curacao after all? Distraught, Ron and Brad decide to return home to Virginia. More than a year later, there have been no new leads in the case of the missing Amy Lynn Bradley. That is, until a Canadian businessman, David Carmichael, gifts the Bradley family some much-needed hope.
He went on a diving trip to Porto Marie in Curacao in August of 1998 with a buddy. There really wasn't anybody on the beach. And as they were washing out their equipment, they noticed 3 people walking down from the beach. It's a girl flanked by 2 men. And the girl walks right up to David Carmichael. He said, almost in his face,
The 2 men force the woman away from the situation, merely a few feet from Carmichael.
as she walked away with her head down, the diving buddy commented to David the tattoos that he had seen. They didn't know anybody was missing. They didn't know what was up. And they noticed that she'd have her head down, and she'd look up and have her head down.
Finding this strange and somewhat alarming, Carmichael decides to follow them. He begins to notice the young woman subtly communicating with him. She seems to be going out of her way to show off her various tattoos to the Canadian traveler.
You know, at the time, he just figured it was a domestic situation. He didn't know, so everybody left.
And upon returning home, months after his trip, Carmichael sees a familiar face and familiar tattoos.
One of the programs that we had done was on that evening, and he heard Curacao. So it piqued his interest, and he went to look at it, and he thought, oh my God, that is the girl. So he immediately contacted us. He tried to reach the FBI in several different ways. He flew down to Richmond, and he explained everything.
The family are now absolutely convinced that Amy was kidnapped and is now being held captive on Curacao. They are also about to receive some crucial help finding their daughter, in the form of a private investigator who has recently taken an interest in the case. It is now more than a year since her disappearance, and the case of the missing Virginia native, Amy Lynn Bradley, has taken a new turn in the form of a significant sighting on the Caribbean island of Curaçao, leading to a Canadian scuba diver providing stark new evidence to suggest that Amy, who went missing while on a family cruise in March of 1998, is alive. In August of 1998, private investigator Frank Jones contacts the Bradley family. A former U.S. military special operative, Jones believes that Amy is part of a massive human trafficking ring operating in the Caribbean.
Human trafficking is a huge concern, and people go missing from cruise ships. They go missing from resorts around the world all the time and sold into sex slavery. It's run by cartels around the world, so it's definitely something to be taken seriously.
Frank thinks he can bring her home, but needs an advance of $25,000 in order to do so. Convinced by his credentials and apparent know-how, the desperate Bradleys ask friends and family for donations in order to help raise the money. Jones leaves for Curaçao shortly thereafter and soon calls the family with some amazing news. He sends back to Virginia pictures of a young woman he believes to be their daughter, a woman who bears what looks to be the very same ankle tattoo as the missing Amy Bradley. Despite her face being obstructed in the photos, the Bradleys want to believe that this woman is indeed Amy. Jones says he now has enough information to launch a rescue effort. All he needs to begin in earnest, he claims, is more money, $100,000 more. After learning of this new development, Ron's former employer offers to front the Bradleys the money. Having sent the Bradley family on their fateful cruise more than a year earlier, Ron's former boss decides to hire a private investigator of his own, Tim Buchholz, to check up on Frank Jones in Curaçao. Now with 2 private investigators on the case, the Bradleys wait in Miami for news of Amy's rescue, as per Jones's instructions. They wait a whole week before Jones phones to say that there was a gunfight with her captors. He wasn't able to rescue Amy. The Bradleys don't know what to think. Having been on the island for only a short time, Tim Buchholz calls to let the family know the truth. It turns out Jones is not a former U.S. military special operative after all, but a con artist who used the money the Bradleys gave him to drink and relax on the beach. The photo Jones claimed to have taken of Amy on the beach turned out to be nothing more than a snapshot of a couple of hired models, made all the more convincing with the help of a stenciled ankle tattoo. Once again, the family are devastated, though this time with the added knowledge of having wasted 2 years of their search on a promise that never was. Nothing more would unfold in the case until 2002, when the Bradleys get a call from the FBI saying that Amy has been spotted on Curaçao once again. While deployed in Curaçao in 1999, an anonymous American naval officer met a woman in a brothel.
He said that 2 girls were at a table and he sat down and one of the girls approached him and leaned in and said, "My name is Amy Bradley and I need help." And he said about that time, his thought was, you can walk outside and get help.
According to the naval officer, the woman tried to explain that she wasn't allowed to leave the brothel and would need his help in order to escape. Unsure of what to do, the officer merely goes on with his night.
So he didn't do anything to help her, and she was motioned away by men and went upstairs.
But because admitting to having been at a brothel while on duty would have meant major repercussions for him at the time, the naval officer fails to report the incident to the FBI until years later.
He sees Amy's picture on the front of a magazine and contacts us. We ask him, why didn't you help her? Why couldn't you have gone to the ship that you were on and gotten help? You're a Navy guy. And he basically explained that he was in an unauthorized situation and that he thought he'd get in trouble. He would have been a hero, but he didn't help her.
With this new piece of evidence, the FBI returns to the scene, but are years too late themselves. The building where the brothel once stood has burned down. Nothing more is discovered regarding Amy until 2005, when two substantial pieces of evidence arrive in quick succession. An anonymous email is sent to the Bradleys with a link to an adult website operating out of the Caribbean. The website advertises an escort service and features a picture of a woman referred to as Jazz. According to Ivor Bradley, the investigator tasked with comparing the photo of Jazz with photos of Amy would later claim that he was so sure the woman in the photo was Amy that he would bet his career on it. This is all the Bradleys need, as they too are convinced Amy and Jazz are one and the same. Now, with a startling new lead, the family once again turned to the media for help. While on vacation in Barbados, an American woman claims to have seen Amy in a public bathroom.
She was in the stall, and she heard some commotion at the door, and then she heard men's voices. She thought, well, one of two things. Something's not right, or I'm in the wrong bathroom. So she lifts her feet up, and she sees somebody walk past and then walk past again. And then she hears someone say, don't do anything, we're right outside, and you better be there tonight, not mess it up.
Once the men leave, she finds a shaken young woman cowering over the sink.
Amy sees her in the reflection, and so she walks up, she's washing her hands, and says, do you work here? And Amy shakes her head, and she said, you on vacation? And she shakes her head, and she says, well, what's your name? At that time, she thought she said, my name is Amy from West Something Field, Virginia. And I said, well, it's probably Chesterfield, Virginia. And she said, oh, I have a daughter named Amy. And she said that about that time, there was scuffling at the door again. She doesn't know that there's anything going on except that you better be here tonight at 11 and we're gonna do this and we're right outside. When she gets out, there's men in the hallway. So she immediately takes out in the store looking for her husband or looking for security, because at that point she said something's not right. She turns and looks, and she said Amy exits the bathroom in the middle of these men, and they kind of get around her and go out the back.
Upon returning home to the United States, she sees Amy's name and picture in a magazine. She contacts the FBI immediately. A new composite drawing is done of Amy and her captors. But despite a new recent photograph and a new composite drawing of both Amy and her alleged captors, no new leads are discovered. As of today, no one is any closer to finding out what really happened to Amy Lynn Bradley. The disappearance of 23-year-old Virginia native Amy Lynn Bradley while on a family vacation in March of 1998 remains unsolved more than 20 years later.
If somebody saw Amy today, she has a few tattoos. She's got a baby Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball on her left shoulder blade with a little beanie cap. She got a full scholarship for college for basketball, so that was a design she came up with. She's got a Japanese symbol on her right ankle, a few inches above her ankle bone. She's got a gecko lizard around her navel, and at the waistband, a little below on her back, she's got a Chinese symbol with some Chinese writing on the inside. Something little, her baby fingers curve in. She's got a scar on her left shin, beautiful green eyes. So that's definitely significant ways to be able to identify. Since then, we have been working nonstop, and we're talking 21 years. We have had what we feel to be some very significant leads with credible individuals who have been interviewed. Some have been polygraphed. Of course, her life has been altered. Our lives have been altered and always will be till we get her back. You know, this is not a conspiracy theory. I mean, we've got facts. We've got things that have happened that we've lived with. With that many people on the boat, and that many eyes, and that many ears, and that many parents, that many crew members, we beg for anybody who knows anything, even if you don't think it matters, to please contact the FBI tip line and help us. It's been 21 years and a few months. And when you don't know where one of your children is, and you don't know what happened, and we know she did not leave us. We know she did not jump off of the boat. To this day, somebody saw her, and somebody wanted her, and somebody took her. We have no reason to believe she's not out there. We have no reason. We have no facts. So we get up in the morning and we say maybe today. And the big sun comes up and we try to focus because she's counting on us. And when we go to bed at night, Ronnie have a special little kiss and we say maybe tomorrow. And so that's what we live with every day. And she needs people's help. So we ask from the bottom of our hearts, if you know anything or if you know anybody that knows anything, please help us. Please help Amy.